Hey, it's Jeff, Director of Training at Patriot Training Center. Today I'm going to do part one of our new gun owner series, and part one is going to be about selecting our first gun. So this can be overwhelming. We live in the golden age of firearms. They come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, manual of arms, calibers. It can be overwhelming out there. So this video is intended to help you with that first selection. Before we move on to that though, one thing I do want to point out that we really need to understand is rarely do we get a chance to take these back after we've purchased them. So it's not like when my wife and I go out to buy a new pair of shoes and she loves hers, but I don't like mine, and I go back and exchange those or get a refund. Normally it doesn't work that way. So we need to make sure that we do our due diligence when we're making this decision. So jumping right into it, what we need to do first is define the purpose of this gun. What's it gonna do for us? Is it gonna be for everyday carry, a concealed carry gun? Is it gonna be a home defense gun? Is it gonna do both, everyday carry and home defense? Is it a competition gun that we're taking just to competitions to shoot for sport? Or is it a range toy that we're only going to take to the range in a box, take it out to shoot it, put it back in the box and go home like the competition gun? Or is it for duty use if you're law enforcement or security or something like that? But there's four things once we define that purpose that we really need to look at when we're thinking about selecting this first gun. And first and foremost, that is, it's got to be reliable. We need this thing to work. So if we are forced to use our gun to defend innocent life, ourselves or that, or an innocent third party, it's got to work because we need it right then, we need it right there, and we need it to work. So that's the first and foremost consideration that we're going to take into account. Secondly, after that, we're going to start looking at how well it fits us and the ergonomics of the gun. All right. So there's a lot of things that go into play right there when we're talking about how the gun fits us ergonomically. And we'll talk about that in just a second when we get some out for a demo. The next is, what caliber is it chambered in? So there's a lot of schools of thought on that. Here at Patriot Training Center, we're like a lot of other training organizations. We recommend 9mm and up. Why do we recommend 9mm and up? Two things. We have a lot of data on that due to law enforcement use, military, and then some of the concealed carry incidents that we've seen. We've got a lot of data that the 9mm and up does as good of a job as we can expect of actually stopping that threat versus some of the smaller rounds. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to stop that threat. So we need that gun to be effective. And we feel like that's the 9mm hollow points, the 40 Smith & Wesson, the 45 ACP, those type cartridges. But below that, we're going to try to stay above that 9mm, okay? So last but not least, if this is a gun that you're going to use for that type purpose, you got to look at concealability and practicality of this gun. So again, they come in all different shapes and sizes. Some guns could be too big to carry, and if the gun is too big to carry and you can't conceal it, you're probably not going to wear it. And then if you ever need it, you're not going to have it, right? But on the opposite side of that, it could also be too small. The smaller the gun is, the harder it is to shoot. Think in terms of physics, mass, things like that affect the way these guns feel when we shoot. The heavier the gun is, the bigger the gun is, the more soft shooting it's going to be. The materials that they use to make the gun, is it a polymer plastic or is it a metal frame? All of that goes into the way that gun feels when we shoot. And some of the problems with the smaller guns is they're very difficult to shoot sometimes. It can be done very well. However, it's something that we need to consider, particularly if we don't get to practice a lot and train a lot with that gun. Okay, so as I said, bigger is usually better because the smaller the gun, the harder it is to shoot, the harder it is to manipulate. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at a couple. So we'll look at a large gun. This is a 6-hour P320 AXG Pro. And as you can see, it's a full-size gun. I believe it's a 4.75-inch barrel, something in that ballpark, and a full-size grip with a big mag well on it. It's a large gun. And as you see in my hand, that's a very big gun. So this is a great gun, shoots incredibly well, it's very reliable. However, the problem is it could be very difficult to carry because it's also a heavy gun as well as a big gun. But what is cool about the big gun, it's so easy, as you see, just to lock that action open safely. And then if I turn it around here on the other side, how easy it is to access the magazine release. reach that slide latch and close the slide if I need to. So the bigger the better when it comes to things like that. And it's actually a whole lot easier to shoot as well, because again, that mass and the length of the barrel and things like that all play a factor into that. However, that could be impractical for us. So let's take a look at a different option. The Glock 19, one of the most popular guns in the world. So this is the new Glock 19 MOS aim point collaboration, the Koa optic that just came out. Really great gun right here with a pistol mounted optic already there from the factory for you. But take a look at the size of that. I can shoot this gun just as well as I can shoot the big full-size gun that we just looked at. I can also manipulate it just as well as I can the other, and do so very safely. And I can still reach the controls and do everything that I want to do with this gun, and I can get a full grip on the pistol, and I can shoot it very well. So we like to say that this Glock 19 size gun is kind of like a Goldilocks. It can do a lot of things for us. It can be a concealed carry gun, it can be a duty gun for an off-duty policeman, and it can be a home defense gun because it does so many things so well. But what you are giving up is a little bit of slide length, barrel length, that could make a little bit of a difference, and a little bit of grip length. So just a little option right there to look at in that size. We really like this gun here. Another option, we have the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 Compact. And as you see, very similar size to the Glock 19. It's just a different gun. So if the Glock doesn't work for you, you got another option. One thing people really like about these guns is the grip angle is different than the Glock. It feels different in the hand. The grip is significantly differently shaped, which is that ergonomics. So another option in that same Goldilocks category would be the Walther PDP. So this is the Walther PDP Compact in that Glock 19 M&P 2.0 size, 15 round magazine, 4-inch barrel. Very easy again to manipulate and do everything that I need to do with this gun, just like the full-size gun, but in a smaller package that I can shoot just as well. And one cool thing that people really tend to like about these Walthers is how comfortable they are in your hand. I mean, it just feels good. Those guys over there at Walther did a fantastic job of making a nice little grip texture, number one, but a grip that just fits really well in your hand and feels really good. And at the same time, you're not losing any shootability or reliability or anything like that. So I wanted to show you those because those are three of my favorite pistols. Actually, I carry a Glock every day. I carry a Glock 45. I like the full-size magazine. So to show you what that looks like, here's a Glock 19X, which is same form factor as the Glock 45 I carry every day. And you see the difference between it and the Glock 19 is the grip length. That's it. So this 19X or a 45 carries 17 rounds in the magazine versus 15. That's the only difference. But why do I like it? It's not necessarily the 2 rounds. It's because of the way it fits my hand. And as you see, I can get a really, really good purchase and a really, really sound master grip on this full-size grip. And I like that, just the way that it feels for me. So that fit, those ergonomics work for me personally, and that's why I choose this gun. But I didn't get there overnight. I had to go through a lot of things and a lot of testing, and wish I would have known some of the things that I know now before I went through all of that back in those days. So let's just talk about some of the ways that we can do that and save ourselves some heartache and maybe some money along the way without buying guns that we don't really want to keep. So we need to research. First and foremost, find out, again, define the purpose of that gun, what you want it to do. For the context of what I'm about to talk about, we're going to assume that this gun is a gun that we want to use for concealed carry, and we also want it to double as a home defense gun. So that's going to take a certain type of pistol, kind of like one of these options that we just looked at, like the Glock 19 or the M&P or the PDP, something in that size. So we need to research these things. There's a lot of ways to do that, but we got, like everything else, we got to be careful where we get our research from. So start with Google. hey, or chat GPT these days, right? Be careful with that. You might get some bad information. However, it's a good way to get some quick information on the gun. So go do that research, initial research, find out what people are saying about this thing. Hop on YouTube. There's a lot of people out there putting videos out there, and you can at least get an idea of what the gun is looking like for other people, what they're saying good and bad about that. So that's one way to start that research. The second way is to go actually get your hands on them, and this is my favorite way. If you have access to a range nearby that rents guns, that's one of the best ways to kind of narrow this thing down. Once you figure out again what the purpose of the gun is, which kind of the 2 or 3 that you're looking at and you're really interested in, go rent them and go shoot them, and then find out how those guns feel in your hand. Because I can tell you from experience, there was a gun back about 15 years ago that was released that I couldn't wait to get my hands on, and I wanted it so bad that I rushed out and bought it, and then I went and shot it and wish I never would have seen the gun ever in my entire life. And that was several $100s that I had just spent on a gun, not to mention all the heartache that come with the anticipation not living up to the hype. So that can happen. So I wish I would have took my own advice and shot that gun first, but you live and you learn, right? So if you don't live near a range that rents guns, maybe you might know someone that has some guns that you can try out and do so in a safe manner. And if all else fails, you can always go to the gun store and at least get them in your hands safely to see how they feel and see how they fit. So when you're doing that, just a couple of quick things I want to show you before we wrap this one up. When you're looking at the fit and the ergonomics, and you're not used to these just yet, you don't know exactly what you're looking for, there's a couple of really important things. And remember, they're not all the same. They may look very similar, but there's subtle differences about all of them that make them feel different for us when we get them in our hands. So a couple of quick things that I really want you to pay attention to is, number one, when somebody's giving you a gun, make sure they give it to you with the action open and they physically and visually check it to be clear first. If they don't do that, don't take it from them. Ask them to do that first. And you should also do the same before you hand it back. All right, so once we get that safety measure out of the way, let's talk about the things I want you to look for. Number one, I want you to look at how high you can get on the tang right here and get your hand up here and do so in a comfortable manner, and then what that does to your trigger finger, and can you actually reach the trigger. So as you see here on the Glocks, which I have big hands but very short fingers, so I'm on the bleeding edge of being able to actually use a Glock effectively, because if the gun is too fat or the trigger is too far forward for me, what can happen is I can keep my trigger finger on the frame of the gun while I'm shooting it. And what that'll actually do, we call that framing the gun. And if my trigger finger is touching that slide while I press the trigger, it's going to push the gun that way and cause the round to go off target. And as Jeff Hall taught us, there is no such thing as a miss. There's only unintended hits. So we've got to be responsible, and not only responsible, but accountable for every round we fire. So little things like that make all the difference in the world. All right, so check that trigger finger reach. Make sure there's space in between your trigger finger and that frame when you touch the trigger. Another thing I would like for you to check out is to make sure that you can reach all the controls, okay? So you're gonna have to unload this thing at some point, and you're gonna have to reach the magazine release. If you can't do that in a safe manner, that may not be the gun for you. You're also gonna have to lock this gun open to the rear. So that slide latch or slide lock, whatever you want to call it, is important also. If it's not where you can safely manipulate the gun, that might not be the gun for you. So there's just little things like that, and the more experience you get, the more you'll understand what you're looking for and how that feels, and it gets a lot easier. It's kind of like riding a bike. It's very hard. You get on there, you pedal, and you crash, and then one day you just keep going, and it's kind of like that. We all get started somewhere. Hope this video helps you, and if you got any questions, you can always shoot us a text in the comments, and we'll be glad to help you out.